And I'd rather fly solo than have my wings clipped for the sake of fitting in. Hey YouTube, thank you for tuning in to watch the replay of my weekly Instagram Live. I'm Dr. Sarah Webb, author, speaker, consultant, and coach who's known around the world as an expert on colorism. Check the description box below if you'd like to dive deeper. All the links are there. Now, if something you hear today resonates deep within your soul, or if you just like it or find it funny, make sure you hit the like button. It's like a virtual high five. And if you'd like to see more videos, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Much love. Hello, everyone. Welcome to your weekly live stream with yours truly, Dr. Sarah L. Webb, the founder and CEO of Colorism Healing. Today's topic is a continuation, a part two, so to speak, of a conversation I started last week on being single as a dark-skinned girl. This week I want to look more at my adult life, so being single as an adult dark-skinned woman. And I just kind of want to share my story. So yes, it includes some social commentary, but I think for anyone listening or watching, just keep in mind that this is kind of it's very deeply based on my personal experience. And the goal is to just, I think, expand our understandings, expand the types of narratives that we have and see for dark-skinned Black women. So before I jump into the nitty-gritty of what I have blogged about for this week, I'd like you to introduce yourself if you're watching live. One, thank you for watching live, and let me know where you're tuning in from and how you're doing today, what the weather's like where you are. It's sunny. It was sunny here in New York, although the sun is now setting. And some announcements. I am really excited that I'll be launching this month. On the 20th is the first one, and the 27th I have the second one. Monthly support groups. I am really excited about that. So last year I did a pilot program for a small group coaching program. So based on feedback as well as requests from other people, I decided to turn the small group coaching program into monthly support groups. And I think that gives people more flexibility and gives greater access to more varieties of people. And it's more flexible in terms of people's schedule and commitment. And I'm really excited to try it. Now, I will say a lot of times people ask for spaces like this and they say, oh, we need something like this, or I'm glad you're doing this. But they're not necessarily ready to join or ready to sign up. But I encourage you to go to colorismhealing.com/coach just to learn about it. Start introducing yourself to the idea of a monthly support group. So I have 3 different tiers. The first tier is open to all women of color. So all my support groups are women only. And the second tier is open to dark-skinned Black women specifically. And then the third tier is also open to all women of color, but it includes one-on-one sessions as well as the support groups. So let me go ahead and pin the topic. I actually am slightly changing the title a little bit. I'm gonna pin that. All right, so let me see who's in the room. Taming the Beast of Anxiety. First of all, I love that screen name. Thank you for loving the shirt. I bought it from Revolution Books, a volunteer-run independent bookstore here in Harlem, New York, that is very, very proactive in the community. They sell all books about revolutionary thought and Black history, brown people history, also feminism, and they actually plan like rallies, they plan protests, and they have weekly like educational seminars and forums where you can like go and learn about political issues of all sorts. They were doing a lot on the Supreme Court's decision on abortion. They were doing a lot in terms of educating people on the war between Russia and Ukraine, and they've been in the community for a long time as well. So I bought this shirt there. I also bought a few books from there recently, and yeah. So let's see who else is on here. Hey folks, come on in the room. Taming the Beast of Anxiety says you're the best. I think you're the best. Yay, yeah, to my story. I know. I last week I talked about how vulnerable it was to open up about this topic. Yeah, I feel less scared today. So I mean that's telling, right? I don't feel as nervous or anxious talking about this aspect of my life and my experience today. But I do think not everybody's going to resonate with it because it is very particular. It is very unique. And, not everyone is going to like everything I have to say. So this disclaimer. So I'm not sharing my story to present myself as like a prototype or like a role model for how other women should live their lives. But I do think all Black women, especially dark-skinned Black women, just being honest about our lives, our lifestyles, helps us recognize that we have options, that we have choices, that we can do something outside of what we might have been conditioned to think was possible for us. So yeah, welcome everybody. As always, feel free to leave your questions and comments in the chat as we go along. I'll pause periodically to read those or, ask questions about the general topic. But yeah, I also changed the title. So on the blog post, it's called On Being a Single Dark-Skinned Woman Part 2. But then my blog header / YouTube header, I have the thumbnail that says The Truth About Being in Love. Okay, so dun dun dun. I'm being a little overly dramatic. It's not that serious. Lil Miss Looney says you got me an A on my presentation about like 3 years ago, if I'm correct. Oh, yay! That's so cool. Yes, to getting folks A's on their presentations. That's so awesome. So I want to start this conversation on being in love / being a single dark-skinned Black woman. And if you didn't see the first talk from last week, please go back and watch it for greater context of everything I'm talking about today. But I want to start off with some song lyrics. Bonus points, speaking of getting A's, bonus points if you type in the chat if you recognize these lyrics and if you can name the artist in the song. But I was listening to this in the car. It was like around Christmas time, like shortly after Christmas, because we were riding back from New Orleans, and I had my headphones on, and this song came on, and I was like, that's my new anthem in terms of like my love story or whatever. And I have this habit of like, well, let me not give away too much. But the song says, I set out on a narrow way many years ago, hoping I would find true love along the broken road. But I got lost a time or two, wiped my brow and kept pushing through. I couldn't see how every sign pointed straight to you. That every long lost dream led me to where you are. Others who broke my heart, they were like northern stars, pointing me on my way into your loving arms. This much I know is true, that God blessed the broken road that led me straight to you. Now, I have always loved that song. I think the vocals on that song are really great, the little piano melody and everything. But like I said, it was like very recently in December when I applied it to me in this particular way, right? I always imagined it primarily in the way the original artist intended the lyrics to be interpreted. But in December, I was like, oh, I actually have a different interpretation or a different perspective on these lyrics now at 36 going on 37. So disclaimer, as I mentioned, that this is I think this is a love story. I claim this as my love story, but it's not that kind of love story. So this is not, oh, I'm a dark-skinned woman who never thought she would get married, but surprise, I found the man of my dreams and now we're happily married with kids. This is not that story. I can't tell that story. That is not my story. And it's also not just keep the faith and one day you too can find the man of your dreams just like I did. So if anyone really wanted that, I want to let you know up front that that's not what this video is about. I am still very single, right? So this is not like the happily ever after in the traditional sense. And so you might be thinking, well, how is this the love story? Well, let me get to that. I also wanted to talk about how it's not just about marriage. So in my post this morning, I talked about, kind of preview what I was talking about today, and I posted how I was modeling wedding dresses years ago. And I had fun doing that because wedding dresses are gorgeous. They are so pretty. And you know, it's a fashion show. I think I'm like a lot of people, like, oh, it's fun to like try on clothes and do your, I didn't really do my hair because I had like the teeny TWA, the teeny weeny afro, so there wasn't much to do. Didn't really put on makeup, just like a little bit of lipstick, but still it was fun to get dressed up, to walk around, try on different dresses and that kind of thing. And I do think that a lot of people, you know, and reading that, because I said it triggered a lot of memories, we're assuming painful memories, but I don't necessarily have painful associations with that. I think what it triggers for me is just thoughtful memories, right? Like things that I'm thoughtful about. But last week I mentioned how when I was younger, I always assumed that it would happen, that things would just happen. And for me, I also wonder how many people thought I meant getting married would just happen. But for me, I was really talking about, I believe that if I just lived long enough, kind of like puberty, if you live long enough, it's just going to happen. I also thought that I would just be in a relationship, right? So not even thinking about marriage, but just one day, you know, you live long enough and you get a boyfriend, right? Or a girlfriend or a partner, however you want to label it. And that for me didn't happen when I was in high school. It didn't happen when I was in college. It didn't happen after I graduated from college. It didn't happen when I went to grad school, right? And it wasn't until I was 33 that I used the term boyfriend to describe somebody, right? And I didn't go on my first date until I was 21, right? And I remember being like in elementary school and, you know, middle school and high school, and like people around me, like they were getting boyfriends and, you know, like starting to date and talking to guys on the phone, and in college for sure. And for me at 21, I was like, this is not just happening. Like it's not the thing I thought it was. But I did go on my first date at 21. It wasn't that great, so there wasn't a second one. But then years passed, right? So 21, 22 came and went, 23, 24, 25, and I'm like, all right, like you still are very single. And when I say single, I'm not just talking about not married. I'm like just not in any way in a relationship, right? And I wasn't really dating lots of different people. So at 33, like for the first time, I used the term boyfriend, considered myself someone's girlfriend. That was kind of blah. It was not that great. And I ended it at 45 days. 45 days. And then about a year later, I would say at 34, I had my second boyfriend. And that lasted about 4 months. So in my almost 37 years, I have been in a quote unquote relationship for about 5 to 6 months total in 37 years. And so when I talk about the single life, I'm really talking about the single life, like really, really single life. I know it inside and out, right? And so part of what this conversation is about today is kind of unpacking and reflecting on what that level of singleness has taught me or has afforded me, right? So yeah, and I think there's a conversation to be had too about, not this conversation, but there's a conversation to be had about, you know, the fact that marriage is not for everyone, that my experience is very much like a heteronormative experience and all. So all those disclaimers are things I want to put out there, and that I encourage other people to also share their love stories, whatever form they might take. And I had a disclaimer last week too, like this is not an anti-marriage conversation at all. But I still think that there's a lot of pressure and stigma around people who are women in particular, who are still single after a certain age. And so, when I was 21, 22, it was like, okay, it hasn't happened yet, but surely it's gonna happen. And then I think around 28, 29, when I was pushing that 30 mark, that's when I started to panic. I was like, oh my gosh. Because y'all know, let's keep it real. Not only do women have all these sexist standards that we face, but the older you get, the worse they get. And it's like, oh yeah, you're less marketable or whatever. And that was the age when I had what I consider my crisis, where I was like, oh my God, crying, oh my gosh, nobody wants me. Why won't I get married? I want somebody, And that was around the time I started trying online dating. I did all the stuff. I did Match. What else did I try? I did eHarmony. I tried eHarmony. I tried Plenty of Fish. I tried Black People Meet. I have some stories. I even thought about starting a comedy blog about online dating. maybe I'll do a little separate discussion about that. But yeah, I definitely, during that period, I'd say around starting really at age 28 to, just a couple of years ago, really. I started going to therapy during my master's program when I was out living in California. I think my depression got really bad just in terms of not being able to wake up in the morning and go to work or pull myself out of bed. And so that wasn't necessarily dating or relationships wasn't the primary focus at that time. Somebody's yelling. I don't know if y'all can hear that. But dating and relationships did come up a lot in therapy, right? So in addition to just talking about depression and negative self-talk and feeling like you have to be 3 times as good as a dark-skinned Black woman, all those things, relationships were definitely, or my desire to be in a relationship was definitely part of what I talked about in therapy during that period of time and throughout the years. And a lot of times, the advice was geared towards and things that you can do to increase your chances. And I talked about last week too about how a lot of times spaces or efforts, initiatives that are geared towards single people are focusing on how to help them not be single rather than focusing on how to help them be single. And I think there's a gap there, a serious gap in terms of resources and support for people who are single. If there's sort of a obsession with dating tips. If it's for single people, it has to be about how to date, right? Versus how to do things on your own. I do see that changing a little bit. I see a lot more dark-skinned Black women being solo, living their solo life, solo travel, that sort of thing. But it's still not at all the norm or not common. So and speaking of, I want to talk about an important shift, a monumental milestone that I had. So I talked about, how I, in grad school, my master's program, was the first time I started therapy. And so off and on throughout the years, I've gone to counseling, but also just doing work on my own, listening to podcasts, watching positive YouTube channels, reading positive books, starting my affirmation practice, starting my, compiling affirmations in my notebook. All of that was an important part of my journey for 7 years, almost a decade now. But when I was in the deepest period of my depression, when I was calling into work and couldn't get to work during the day, the first thought that I would have in the morning was, I can't do this. I would wake up and I would literally just hear in my head, I can't do this. I can't do this. I just can't do this. But fast forward years later, and one day after doing all that work, one day I woke up and the first thought I heard was, I love you. And that was surprising me because it came out of nowhere. It was just like a thought that popped in my head. It was like, I love you. And that day, like, just completely changed my worldview. Completely changed everything I understood about myself, about love. Because, as you can guess, I was single, and yet this thought came into my head. And so it opened my mind to the fact, and this is why I changed the title from just like focusing on being single to focusing on being in love. Because this is the key takeaway. I'm going to keep talking, but this is the key takeaway. If you have to tune out, you'll get this nugget that I really want to focus on. It opened my mind to the reality that I could be in love without being in love with someone else. That I could be in love with me, that I could be in love with my life, that I could be in love with life in general. And so I understood that feeling of being in love as just an emotional state, like any other emotional state that was not dependent on external circumstances. I started to think about the feeling of being in love just like the feeling of joy. I was like, I don't have to be in a relationship to feel joy. So why do I have to be in a relationship to feel like I'm in love? I was like, okay, I don't have to be in a relationship to feel like I have peace, or to feel happy, or to feel giddy, to feel inspired, right? A relationship is not required for any of those other emotional feelings, emotional states. So why is a relationship, according to society, required in order to feel like I'm in love? And so that random thought, not so random because I believe everything is divinely orchestrated, but that thought that seemed to come out of nowhere completely changed like the way I went about living my life. And realizing that I always have access to that, to love, period, right? And of course we know we are love. Like, love is the ultimate truth. And so I am in love. I'm deeply in love, just not in the way society says I should be, right? My current love, the way I'm currently experiencing and enjoying and basking in love, does not look like what the movies say it looks like. Does not look like what the old aunties say it looks like. Does not look like what Valentine's Day holidays say it's supposed to look like. And I'm not even talking about familial love. I'm not even talking about platonic love with friends. I'm not talking about loving your dog. I'm literally just talking about like just sitting in a chair and feeling like you're in love and like just smiling to yourself for no apparent reason. Like nothing could be going on. You don't have a dog, a cat, you don't have a family. You're just by yourself in a random chair on the subway, like literally any moment, anywhere, any context, love is possible. That feeling of being in love is possible. That's what I've come to believe by virtue of my experiences. But also that day was like initiation, the first day. But you can imagine, this was like maybe 2017, 2016, 2018, 20 teens. And so I talked about those two relationships I had at 33 and 34. However brief they were, it was almost like those were like the capstone courses, right? Where the test was, so yeah, you've been taking these classes on love, you've been learning a lot, you've been cultivating self-love, you've been going to therapy, doing your affirmations, and now it's time to apply it. Now it's time to put it into practice when it really counts. Are you really ready? Because it's easy to, just go about things within a bubble and say, yeah, I have this self-esteem and I have this self-worth and I have this self-love. But when sometimes life is like, okay, cool. Now it's time for the exam. Now it's time for the, not the hazing, but for you to actually do the thing that you've been in school, been getting your education to learn. And I think I passed more or less, ultimately because I'm here now, right? But I had to realize that those were tests, and that, I was relying so much on the theory, or like being in love with myself in theory. And I think that's why I needed, like, for me, not everybody needs gross relationships, but I needed to be shown that I wasn't applying self-love like I thought I was. I wasn't applying my self-worth and my self-esteem the way I thought I was. And what it had ripple effects in every area of my life, right? So ending those relationships, fleeing them, not just ending them, like literally running away from them, those relationships. I realized, like, oh, I don't have to settle for anything. And so when I realized, oh, I'm not settling for this relationship, was also the time period when I stopped settling for my job, when I stopped settling for a particular lifestyle that felt safe, that felt like what society would approve of. And it taught me that I don't have to settle for anything I'm not in love with. So I have never been in love in the traditional sense. When people usually say, oh, I'm in love, like, I've never been in love in that way, as in like with a man, right? With a romantic partner. And so I was like, I don't have to settle for a person if I'm not in love with them. I don't have to settle for a job if I'm not in love with it. I don't have to. I don't have to settle for a location, a city, a town, if I'm not in love with it. I don't have to settle for a lifestyle if I'm not in love with it. And that's what I think ultimately my inner and outer experiences have been trying to get me to not only understand, but to stand in and to act on. And so the true testament to really being in love is that I believe now that I'm worthy of pursuing the life of my dreams. And for me, I don't dream of a family. I don't dream of being a wife and kids. I don't dream of having kids. I don't, right? I don't dream of the fairy tale wedding. Now, I'm not against partnership and marriage, but that's not what I wake up every day dreaming about now. And so going back to those song lyrics, right? I couldn't see how every sign pointed straight to you. And so what I believe, I mentioned last week too, that as I get to understand astrology better and like other forms of spirituality, I do believe that some people in this lifetime are meant to be in relationships. Like, I do believe like that's part of a lot of people's destiny. But I think our culture makes it seem as if it has to be everybody's destiny. Like, you're not normal, or you're doing it wrong if you're not getting married by a certain age, especially if you're a woman and having kids and like just doing the traditional thing. And so, one, I think this conversation is important because I think more of us as humans can realize that, okay, that doesn't have to be my destiny just because it's a cultural norm. And we live in a time in the world where more people than ever before have the freedom to choose to break the norm. Not everybody, but more people than at any other point in the history of humanity. More people now have agency and choice over their lives. And so I celebrate that, even while we know we have years to go, right? Like miles and miles to go so that everybody has that choice. But I do believe that every inner and outer experience I've had, while I might have thought I was seeking relationships, especially, as I mentioned, in that concentrated period of about 5 years, I know now that every sign every experience was God bringing me back home to myself. And I think it's a cultural conspiracy to condition us to always be seeking outside of us, to always be searching away from ourselves, always be chasing something beyond us, when really we are the answer. And I know some people reject and resist stories like this because they're like, well, yeah, I know I love myself, but I still want a man, right? I still want to get married, I still want a wife, I still want a partner. And that, again, like, that's totally fine. I already know, like, this ain't gonna resonate for everybody. Not everybody is trying to hear a self-love story. Like, they want just the regular love story. But I also, I'm looking at my blog post because one of the things I wrote here was that I would rather be out on my own than tied to a relationship, job, or location or lifestyle that I was not in love with. And I'd rather fly solo than have my wings clipped for the sake of fitting in. And again, I have certain forms of privilege that give me that sense of greater agency and freedom, perhaps, and other people might feel free to exercise. But again, if it's not always that dichotomy, it's not always the either or. And if you have other options, great. But for me, at this point in my life, it's a choice of staying on the ground to fit in and to try and fit a mold or a box that culture and society says I should fit into, or flying, soaring, spreading my wings, even if I have to fly solo. So I'm gonna choose to fly. And I ain't waiting on nobody to wise up and realize that they should come on this adventure with me. And so I would say too, like, for anybody who is currently single, like, don't wait to live your life. Don't wait on other people to start living your life. Don't wait on some hypothetical partner, future partner, before you start doing the things with your life that you want to do. And I was watching a YouTube video. There's this really cool woman. She's from New York, and she does a lot of real estate videos. And she just bought property in Joshua Tree, California, on her own, by herself. She invested in land in Joshua Tree, California. She's making plans to, like, build a house there someday that, she could host retreats at and stuff like that. Like, again, more than ever, we can see representations of that, of single women of all races really doing this, but I'm, specifically thinking about dark-skinned Black women having the audacity to do this, just making big moves and flying and living their best lives, not waiting for other people to decide they want to come along. And for a part of me has always been this way, right? Like, if I wanted to go to a concert, I remember when I was in undergrad, I wanted to see Citizen Cope, and none of my friends knew who that was. Twice I wanted to go see Citizen Cope. Once in undergrad and once when I was getting my PhD, and none of my friends, none of my Black friends, and none of my other friends were interested or even knew who that was. And I was like, well, I'm gonna go by myself because I want to see Citizen Cope, and I ain't gonna wait. I ain't gonna deny myself of something I truly desire just because someone else doesn't want to join me. If I wanted to go out to eat, if I wanted to go eat pancakes and my roommates didn't want to get up in the morning and come eat pancakes with me, I went to Huddle House and ate pancakes by myself. And so I think, I actually heard in my period of online dating, there was this lawyer from Baton Rouge, and he was like, I was talking about how I was about to graduate and I was applying for jobs just all over the country. And he was like, well, you should prioritize being in a relationship over finding a job. And he's like, because you can get jobs come and go, but you really want to just get a man first. Basically, was his message to me. You should focus on getting your man first before you do all these other things with your life. And, that's not what I ended up doing. I very much went on about my life, thankfully so. Whether or not men were wise enough to come and enjoy the ride with me. But I also think that for some people, there's a way to be in a relationship where you still feel that sense of freedom, right? And there are, again, I applaud the people who are breaking the norms even within the context of relationships, because you can be in a relationship and still not do it the traditional way. You can be in a relationship and still not follow what society says you do. Even like, for example, people who get married but decide not to have kids. Like, even culturally speaking, like, that's like, why are you doing that when you're not gonna have kids, right? Or, you know, whatever it is, or people who get married and live in separate houses. There's so many different ways to do partnerships even. And that's, you know, not even talking about, you know, polyamory or, you know, those kinds of things, are just people who date and just choose to date but never like enter into a serious relationship. I think there's just more ways to be. But I'll end. Wait, before I end, I haven't read any of y'all's comments, which is not normal for me. I'm at 7:36 and I haven't looked at any comments. Let me come back up in here and see what I've been missing. All right. Good evening, little Marielle. Okay. I think I'm caught up now. Let's see. Belly Bayla says, I can relate to so much of this. Yeah, sis, I'm glad. It says, thank you for sharing. You're welcome. It says, do it. Comedy blog about online dating. Oh my gosh, I feel like it would be so fun. Or like even doing my own little TV series. Sarah does online dating. You look beautiful today, by the way. Thank you. I got Nina with me. I got the spirit of my ancestor Nina with me today. There's definitely a difference between those two. Let's see. Love your fro. Thank you, John. I like my fro today, y'all. I feel like I was styling and profiling today. And then the sun was shining too. Because I had this like long black like trench coat with my yellow and black Nina Simone. I had the little earrings on. My fro was popping. Yes, I turned some heads in the streets of Harlem today. Okay. Thank you, Jendelle, for the badge. Thank you. Appreciate all you do. Melanated social work. What's up, social work? Y'all know them social workers are, what do you call it, like the teacher's pet. You have a special place in my heart. I love me some social workers. JB1710 says, I hear ya. Facts, preach, not only understand, but to stand in. Dr. Sarah L. Webb. Rascal Flash, you got it. The anti-blackness reader. God bless the broken road. Y'all, I'm really behind on these comments. Citizen Cope. Yes, Cope. That's my boy. I got his guitar pick. And see, I'm glad I went to that concert the second time because he gave me his guitar pick at the end of his concert on the stage. You know, when the artists, they shake hands or whatever. Got a guitar pick from one of my favorite artists. Belly Bayless says, I struggle with self-love as a form of settling. You deserve a quality partner if you want one. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think whether you have a partner or not, you have to have self-love. I think self-love is non-negotiable for all humans, regardless of their relationship status or their relationship goals. Let the drummer kick. Yeah. Yes, concerts, pancakes, destinations, all of it. Thank you for sharing. You are welcome. Online dating can be successful. It just takes time. Yeah. For me, everybody has to weigh the cost-benefit analysis. And, you know, my attitudes about all of this have shifted periodically throughout my life, but where I am now, like, I ain't got time. Right now, I don't want it bad enough to put in the work of online dating. Like, that's what I think. When that scale tips of like when I want a relationship, when I desire a relationship enough to put in the work, sure. But it's like, if the remote is across the room, like, do I really want to watch a movie that bad? to get up and go across the room and get the remote. Like, you just have to know what you want and what it's worth to you. Let's see. Though I did meet my life partner online in 1996. Yes, I remember you saying that. I remember that. Like, that's OG. That's like some OG online dating right there. And one of the other YouTubers I follow met her husband via email on accident. Not like through a dating app, but just like in an email chain. So yeah, I also want to reiterate that this conversation is not saying self-love in the place of romantic love. So I'll go back to the conversation about in astrology. You know, I understand now that everybody has different destinies, different paths, is here in this incarnation, this lifetime, to do different things. And there are people who are in this lifetime meant to go it alone, meant to go be single, but only you can know that. And I don't think it's healthy to have a cultural norm or a cultural expectation that you have to be in a relationship in order to, or like what I mentioned last week, is that romantic validation, particularly from a man in this cis hetero patriarchy, is the ultimate success for a woman. It's the ultimate validation a woman could ever have. Regardless of how many degrees she has, regardless of, she could save the world 50 times over, she could put 1 million college students through school, open a school, you know, be president 6 times in 5 different countries. She could do every accomplishment under the sun, and it's diminished if it doesn't have a husband. And I think that's toxic. I think it's also a way to control women, is to say the only important success you could have in life is to be a wife and a mother. I think that is very much a way in this patriarchal society to control the way women show up, to control the things that they feel comfortable saying, to control the way they dress, to control the way they do their hair, to control how they present themselves in order to be desirable to the opposite sex in particular. And I do think that's why our sisters who do not participate in the heteronormative dating market or marriage market are important voices in terms of the overall revolution and liberation for women. But yeah, I think it's the goal for me, or the point for me in sharing my story, is for people to not be paralyzed or crippled by that stigma of being single, especially after a certain age. And I think that's dangerous. Regardless of whether you want to be in a relationship or not, it's wrong for there to be such a stigma of not being in one. And to feel like you can't live an amazing life as a single person. I don't think it's anything wrong with desiring to be in a relationship either, because I remember that being something I had to deal with when I did have that deep desire. And, you know, maybe one day it'll come back. But as I'm talking today on March 14th, I'm like, when I think about dating, it feels very boring and bland to me, and it's uninspiring today. Again, that desire could come back tomorrow for all we know. But during the period of my life when I wanted to be in a relationship, I also felt that there was a stigma about the desire to be in one, because women are always in a double bind, where if you don't want one, you're stigmatized. But if you seem like you're trying too hard to get one, or if you want one too bad, that's also a bad thing. You're seen as weak or that kind of thing. And yeah, I did not, for a long time, I didn't feel comfortable saying that I wanted to be in a relationship because of that. So yeah, we'll see what tomorrow teaches me. You know, we never know. And also, I think even while I'm in a place where I don't feel inspired or motivated to pursue relationships, I am very aware of the fact that like I can meet somebody tomorrow who inspires me and who motivates me to be in a relationship with them. So I'm not even, you know, gonna put limitations on myself in terms of what I end up doing in the future. Yeah, but again, it's like where I was a few years ago in terms of like really longing for that and crying at night because I didn't have it and felt like I could never have it. I'm not there. And in fact, it's everything, it just feels bland to me. I was having a conversation with one of my friends and she was saying how fun dating is. And I was like, it doesn't sound fun to me right now. Maybe, you know, just who I was dating in the past. But yeah. So thank you all for listening to my story. Yeah, I was less nervous about sharing my story today. So I guess it's a testament to how, like, once you start talking about something, the fear kind of dissipates. But like I said, there are so many stigmas, so many ways that society tries to control women into, like, pretzeling ourselves into who they think we should be. And so that's why I show up the way I do. Partly because I can and I want to and I'm free to do it. But I just hope, and I mentioned this, when was it? Oh, I was doing a wellness retreat. I spoke at a wellness retreat yesterday. And I was telling the women, like, I'm saying all this not so that people look like me or do life like I'm doing, but so they feel validated in making the choices they make. So that they feel validated in not doing or choosing to do whatever they want. And so it's about role modeling freedom, not role modeling the choice to be single. It's about role modeling the choice to do you on your own terms, whether that's doing it solo or not. All right. Thank y'all. So next week, I don't know what I'm talking about next week. Y'all know, because I just finished writing this blog. I don't know. Something, I think I'll go back to talking about internalized bias and how to unprogram it. Less personal stuff, less memoir, more social commentary and analysis. All right. Thank you all. And I hope you understand, like, I didn't really get into like colorism specifically today, but I think most of the people in my community and who follow me, like, make the connections organically, like just inherently understand how colorism is a factor in all this. And again, if you want more of colorism specifically, listen to last week's video, because I do like address it specifically in terms of how it impacts people's beliefs and could impact people's experiences with dating and that sort of thing. All right, y'all. Take care. Love you so much. Thank you for being a witness for me in terms of my truth. I think that's an important part of truth telling, is having people who are willing to bear witness. Now I'm thinking about Paulo Freire, pedagogy of the press. So let me go, because I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. Love y'all. See y'all next week. Mwah.